Hey guys, so today we're changing this carrier bearing for this 2006 BMW 325xi. But yeah, this is like a drive shaft center support bearing or whatever you want to call it, but it goes in the middle of the drive shaft. And like the rubber that's around the bearing here, it got all chewed up and it's wore out on this car. I mean, this is just 2006. It's like the first year of this body style. But all these body styles, I mean, they pretty much all get the same bearing and they all like interchange the same way pretty much. So if you got any kind of E90, then this will work for your car. So yeah, I got the new one right here and I'm just gonna jump underneath and show you guys what all you got to take loose. So I mean, right under here, normally there's a black cover right in this area. Some of your cars might have it, some might not, but if you do have it, you can just pop the black cover off. It's just like this, but it goes through the middle there as well. And then come on in here, you got this, see these 4 holes right here? There's a bracket that goes over here, and so you have to take these 4 bolts out on each side, and then that bracket comes off, which actually, now that I think about it, you might not have to take that off. Well, yeah, you probably want to take that off, but you might not have to in order to get this out. Mine's just off because I haven't put it back on again. But anyway, because I think you can get up to this bolt here in front of that bracket, but normally there's a bracket here that you might have to take off. But anyway, so I'm gonna take the drive shaft out without taking the muffler out. So I mean, it's not too bad. I mean, it's obviously a little tight down here. Okay, so here's the back end of the drive shaft, and all you got to do is, I already took off all the bolts, so I just took off these bolts. There's 3 of them, 1, 2, and then if you turn, you got to make sure that your car is in neutral. And if you do this, you want to make sure that you block the tires. I got a couple blocks right here. That way the car doesn't roll back and forth on you accidentally for some dumb reason. But anyway, so you can either take off these bolts. These don't have a nut on this side. It's easier to take these off because you don't have to worry about the nut. But I just took off these because, I mean, everybody has, yeah, tools to take those off. And then your center support, all you have 2 bolts, one here and one on the other side. The one on this side is a little harder to get to. I just took it off with a ratchet wrench, and those are 13 millimeter. But then the bolts in the back here are 16 millimeter. And then the bolts in the front, if you see that white bolt right there, those are also 16 millimeter. So the front and back bolts are 16 mil, and these in the middle are 13 mil. But when it comes to the front, you can see there's a black bolt here. There's 3 black bolts and there's 3 white bolts. You can either take off the 3 black bolts in order to get it loose, or you can take off the 3 white bolts in order to take it loose. It's easier to take off the 3 white bolts because they don't have a nut on the back side. So you can just go in there with an extension like this. Just take an extension in there with a 16 millimeter socket, and you can just take those 3 white bolts off. If you take the black ones off, you have to hold there's a nut on the other side, so you're going to need a wrench on the other side in order to get the bolt off, and that's why it makes it harder to take off the black ones, because the white ones just go straight into the shaft that goes on into the transmission. Take a flat screwdriver and go in here and pry it apart. Okay, so in order to pry these apart, I mean, they can be a little hard to get apart, but you just gotta like go in with a screwdriver and kind of hit it. You don't want to, I mean, break anything or whatever, but a good way to do it is just go in like this, just pry like that. And there are better ways to do this. I mean, a chisel sometimes works better just to, I mean, you don't want to chisel the metal. There's like metal rings in here that go through the rubber. And if you go in here with like a screwdriver and kind of hit it a little bit and turn it, it kind of pulls it apart. But yeah, sometimes they're pretty rusted and stuff, so you just got to work with it a little bit and try not to damage your rubber thing here. Push the drive shaft towards the front as far as you can and maybe pry it a little bit with a screwdriver. I had to use a screwdriver and pry it just a little bit in order to get it to come down through here, through like kind of one of these grooves here. But yeah, you can get it out. So, and then the front end just popped loose on this one, but I mean, sometimes the front end's going to come off a little harder because this is the second time I've had this drive shaft out. So I just screwed up. The plan was to just pull this drive shaft straight out the back after I took the white bolts off, which the white bolts goes directly into the, like the shaft that goes directly into the transmission. Like that's where the white bolts mount to. And I took those off because I thought that would be easier, because the black bolts, these black ones, have nuts on the back, and I wasn't, yeah, it would have been harder to get to those nuts in order to get these off. So now I can't pull it out because this rubber bushing is in the way. But if I take the black bolts off, then I could pull it out, the drive shaft. So if you're doing this, just a quick tip, make sure that you take the black bolts off while you're, you know, taking it off back here. Make sure you take the black bolts off instead of the white bolts. That way you can pull the drive shaft out all the way, because now I'm like at this point, and yeah. And now I'm gonna have to take these black bolts off anyway, because this rubber thing's not gonna come out with it. But I will be able to pull it out once I take these black bolts off and disconnect the rubber bushing from it. So yeah. So this one doesn't have a bolt in here, but so yeah, you basically just gotta pull it apart because there's nothing in here to hold it together. So I mean, the way I did it is it's basically apart now. I just held it like this, and you don't really want to hit this drive shaft, but it's better to hit like right here. So okay, that's pretty much it. Okay, so there's this rubber like sleeve. It's just a cover, and it has like a ring on this end and on this end, and on this side, like it just pops in there. And in order to get it off of that thing right there, you just pull this lip off, and then in order to get it off this other side, you just pull it until it comes off. So yeah, it comes off a little hard at first, and then this thing, I mean, basically that's the bearing right there, and you basically just hammer that off as well. So I'm gonna see how that goes. I already got it loose, so basically just want to hit it a couple times, rotate it, hit it from each end, and yeah, it doesn't come off that hard. And then you want to make sure you put the new one on the same way. The main thing, you want to make sure that your bearing is seated all the way up against this black, whatever, I don't know. Make sure that the silver part right here, where my fingernail is, make sure that the silver part is up against the black here. That way, you know it's in all the way. And then your other piece of drive shaft, the small end goes towards the bearing, and the bigger end goes towards the drive shaft. Push it in until you feel that it goes over the lip. And this has a lip too for that. You push it in, push this over. like that. And that's pretty much it. And you can push it all the way together. That way it goes into the car easier. So yeah. And now it's all ready to go back in. When you put the drive shaft in, you want to make sure that you got this thing turned the right way. Because if you don't take the muffler out like I'm doing, then it's going to be hard to turn it around. Okay, so I mean, I basically covered how to take the drive shaft out. So I mean, now I'm just going to put it back in, and that's basically like it's basically the same thing as taking it back out, or yeah, it's taking it out. So yeah, you guys should be able to figure out how to put it back in. And I got it turned around right now, but it's not hard to figure out because it won't fit if you don't have it in right. But yeah, I mean, mainly just put this thing, stick it up in there and mount these 2 bolts, and then mount those 3 bolts. And I had to take this thing off. When I took it out, I had to take this thing off because I wasn't able to pull the drive shaft out since I left the muffler in there. But if you know you can get your muffler off easy, then it might be easier just to take your muffler off, but usually they're pretty, yeah, rusted. I actually had to change the bolts in my muffler, but so I'm just gonna put this back on and stick this thing back in, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, this went bad in my car. Every time I took off like a little fast, this thing would bounce around in here and it would vibrate. So like taking off slow, it didn't have a problem, or you didn't hear it. But if you took off like a little fast at all, like you could hear the clanking. So yeah, I mean, and it would also vibrate if you took off a little fast or anything. But so yeah, if this might be your problem. But so yeah, hopefully this video helps you out a lot with that. And yeah, please like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments down below.